This is a series on Linux shell commands. This tutorial is meant for users who have absolutely no experience with Linux shell commands. I'm using Linux Mint version 20.1 with XFCE desktop as my Linux environment for this tutorial. But these commands would work on any Linux flavor or distro. In fact, they should work on any Unix-based operating systems, such as Mac OS or Solaris or any other Unix-based operating system. Linux shell commands are entered and executed in an application or tool called a terminal. So we need to start a terminal first in order for us to enter and execute Linux shell commands. So let's do that. Click on the Linux Mint icon here, and that opens up a menu, and you can start typing in the search box terminal, and you see that terminal option is here. So click on that to launch the terminal window. You see that the terminal window is launched. This terminal provides a text-based user interface to the computer. The terminal provides an area where you can type in your Linux commands. The command you entered into the terminal is executed by a program called shell. This is the reason why these commands are called shell commands. This string that you're seeing here is known as command prompt, and this dollar sign is also part of that command prompt. And whatever commands you enter, you have to enter after the dollar sign. This is where you start typing in your commands. The first command that we enter is to show what is the current directory that we are in. It's called pwd. And when I click enter, it shows that we are in the directory called home John. This is the home directory for user John. I've logged into my Linux system using this username John. So when you start the terminal, it actually brings you to this home directory. Very first time when you launch the terminal, you always land in your home directory. And in this case, since I'm logged in as John, we are in John's home directory. A directory contains files and other directories. So to see what is in the directory, we use ls command. First, let's use pwd to see what is our present working directory. Okay, it's home, our current directory is home John. And if you want to know what files are in this directory, the command for that is ls. ls stands for list. And you can see that it's got files and directories here. Right now, you cannot tell which one is a directory and which one is a file out of this output. But if you want to know which one is a file and which one is a directory, you can actually give ls with another option, ls minus l. They call this a flag. Okay, L stands for ls minus L stands for ls long listing. So when you do that, you get a longer listing, not just the files. You also see the permissions for the files and who owns the file and what group that owner belongs to, so on and so forth. You see the file size when it was last touched or created or updated, and file name here. And if you see, some of these files have D in the first character here, D as the first character, and that indicates that this particular entry in the directory is another directory itself. So we have in our home directory two files, cities.txt and names.txt. Other than those two files, the rest of the entries belong to directories. And also, if you notice, when you do ls-l, the output is sorted by file names, as you can see here, right? But if you want the output to be sorted, for example, by the time of creation of the file, then you can do ls-l t for timestamp. So if you see, it shows you the, the file that was created latest at the top, second latest, and so on and so forth. So it's sorted in the descending order from the latest to the oldest, this output. But if you want to reverse that output, you can, for example, do ls minus lrt, or R stands for reverse, T stands for timestamp, L stands for long listing. So if you do ls minus lrt, you see that the output is presented in a reverse order. ls command shows all the files in a given directory. So these are the files, all the files that are not hidden actually. It shows all the files which are not hidden when you give this ls minus l command or ls command, right? But in Linux, it's possible to have hidden files. And hidden files start with the character dot. So if you want to display the hidden files that are there in each directory, you can give this command ls minus al. That means all files including hidden. A stands for all, L stands for long listing. So ls minus al should show you everything. If you see, we have a lot of hidden files in this folder. .vbox client, .profile, .gt, so on and so forth. So what all the files that are starting with a dot are hidden. So you will not see them if you give simply ls minus l command. If you want to see hidden files, you have to include the flag minus a, ls minus a, and L for long listing. So you see them. And another thing that I wanted to show you is if you want to see what files are there in a given directory, you can specify the directory name after ls minus l. For example, if I want to see all the files that are stored in the pictures folder, I just need to give this command ls minus l and specify the name of the directory that I want to list. So that shows you all these files that are there in the pictures directory, and they're all listed here. There's several files. So if you want to see which is your current working directory, you can again, issue the pwd command, and that tells you you're here. And you see that there are several directories here as indicated by the first letter here. And if you want to go inside one of these directories, then the command to use is cd. cd stands for change directory. And you want to change the directory to pictures, you have to say cd space pictures. That's what you type in. So when you do that and press enter, Okay, I spelled it wrong. So let me say that again. CD space pictures. I did not have a key there, so it is telling me no such file or directory. So CD pictures should, okay. Now if you see, it has taken me into the pictures directory, and you can also see in my prompt here. Now my prompt says home John pictures, home slash John slash pictures. And if you want to confirm you're indeed inside this pictures folder or pictures directory, you can do that by again typing in pwd command, print working directory command. So that's what you see here. It indeed confirms that we're inside pictures directory. And if you want to see what files are there in that directory, you can, give ls-l command again, and that should list everything that is there, all the files that are not hidden. So these are the files that are in this directory. So we have now looked at pwd command for printing the current working directory. We looked at cd for changing the directory, and we looked at ls. And there are some more ways to use cd command that I will discuss now. So if you want to go back to home John directory from pictures, you can either give dot means the parent directory. The parent directory of pictures is John. So when you type in cd dot, it'll take you back one level, which is John in this case. So you can go forward by giving cd pictures, or you can, okay, again, I typed it wrong. Okay, another way of doing it is, okay, let's go back. Another way of doing it is specifying the complete path. So in this case, cd home John pictures is the complete path. So when you enter that command and press enter, you are now again in home slash John slash pictures. So you're in the pictures directory, right? So there are a couple of ways to change directory, right? So if you want to go back to home John, you can say cd, you can type in cd dot, or you can even give again absolute path, right? Cd home John definitely will take you back there. But the shortcut way of doing that is cd space dot, right? The next command we're going to discuss is cat command. Cat command is used for displaying the contents of a text file. So we have two text files here. We have cities.txt and names.txt in this directory. And if you want to display the contents of this cities.txt, the command for doing that is cat cities.txt, cat and file name. So when you press enter, you can see the contents of this file, cat cities.txt. So cat is used for displaying the contents of text files. The next command we're going to discuss is for creating a directory. We have several directories here, and if you want to create a new directory, the command for doing that is mkdir, mkdir, and you have to give the name of the directory that you want to create. So let's say I'll call it new dir. So now command that we gave here is for creating the new directory. Let's see if it's got created or not by doing ls-l. So you can see here that we now have a new directory called new dir. You can give any name. I just gave new dir as the name. So if you go into new dir by using cd new dir, and you can see that I'm in that newly created directory. You can also check by issuing pwd command. So we are in this new directory. And if you want to see what files are there in this new directory, newly created directory, you can see that there are no files. So if you want to now copy a file from one directory to another, the command for doing that is cp. Cp is for copying. Let's say we want to copy cities.txt from home John directory. We have cities.txt here in this home/home/John directory. So if you want to copy from /home/John the file cities.txt to the current directory, you have to give the name, the source directory and the file name, and the destination directory and the file name. In this case, the destination directory is newly created directory, which is /home/John/new dir. And you don't have to specify the file name. If you don't specify the file name, it gives the same file name. But if you specify a file name, it can create that, it will copy that file cities.txt into a new name. No, just for this example, I'm not changing the name of the file, so I'm just going to do this. Now, if we do ls-l, you can see that cities.txt got copied into the current directory, which is /home/John/new dir. Now, there is another way to do this copy command. I'll show you that. We will copy, let's say, names.txt from home John /home/John directory. So let's do that. Home John names.txt to the current directory. Current directory also is aliased by this dot. So when you don't have to necessarily enter the entire absolute path for the current directory. You can just substitute dot for this absolute path. So this dot represents the current directory. So when you do cp/home/john/names.txt and space and give dot, it's going to copy this file from this directory to the current directory. Let's do that. Now if you do ls-l, you should see two files. There you go. So there are both the files. And we copied this using the absolute path, cities.txt, and the next file we copied using the relative path name, which is this is actually, we're using dot here, which represents this entire path. So dot stands for current directory in this case. Okay, that is that. And the next command we are going to look at is move. Move is a command that, as the name states, moves the file from one directory to another directory, or you can even move it within the same directory and give it a different name. For example, I can do mv names dot txt as a new names dot txt. So what this is going to do is I'm not going to move this into another directory, but I'm going to move this file and give it a new name. So this names.txt file I'm copying to new names.txt by this command. So if you do now ls-lrt, you can see that it is now called new names.txt. This file name got changed. Similarly, if you want to move this new names.txt to, let's say, another directory, let's create a directory here, mkdir test1, right? So if you do ls-l, you can see we have test1 directory there, and we can do the move by using mv command. Mv stands for move new names.txt, and we are going to move it to test1 directory. So if you do this and do ls-l, you can see that new names.txt is no longer there in the current directory, which is /home/John Newdire. But if you check ls-l of test1, you will see that test1 now has new names.txt copied or moved from the current directory to that. So move command is used for moving of files from one place to another. Right? It could be a directory or it could be same directory, but you can give a new name to the file. That's one way to rename the files. Then we can look at how the command for deleting the files. If you want to, let's say, delete cities.txt file, command for doing that is rm. Rm stands for remove. So rm cities.txt, if you do that, you can see that that file got removed. Right? And if you want to remove the file from test1 directory, you can give rm command again, but now you have to specify rm test1 slash new names.txt. We know that new names.txt is there in the test1 directory. If you want, we can check that before deleting it by doing ls-l test1, and you can see that new names.txt is there in test1 directory. So we can remove that using rm command. We will type rm test1 slash new names.txt, and that should remove the file. So if you do now ls-l test1, it says 0 because there's nothing there. Now, if you want to delete the directory itself, then the command for doing that is, see, in the current directory, there is only test1 directory, and if you want to remove test1, you can use a command called rmdir. Rmdir removes the directory that is named after that. So if you do ls-l, you don't see anything here. But one thing to remember with rmdir is it only removes empty directories. If there are files in that directory, rmdir doesn't work. You have to first delete the files or any contents of that directory and then give rmdir command. That's how that works. Okay, sometimes you might want to clear the screen. For example, there is ls minus l output on the screen, on the terminal screen. And if you want to clear that, you can do that by typing in clear command. See, so it clears the screen. Again, ls minus l will bring you an output of the directory entries in this current working directory. And if you want to, for example, clear the output on the screen, you can do clear command. Then the other thing that I want to mention before moving on to other topics is I want to revisit cd command. Again, cd stands for change directory. And if you see here, we have several directories, as can be seen from the first character of this output, ls minus l output. And let's say we want to go into a directory called pictures. This is the directory we would like to go into. And maybe you do ls minus l there. There are a lot of files there, as you can see. And if you do pwd, you can see our current working directory is pictures. And also my command prompt is set up in such a fashion that it would always display the directory that I'm in, so that I don't have to give this pwd command. Command prompts are very customizable, so, and that's a topic for probably another video. But the command that I want to discuss here is cd again. So we came into pictures directory from /home/John. And if you want to go back to the parent directory, you can do that by typing in cd dot dot. Dot dot is an alias for parent directory in Linux, and indeed in most Unix systems. Right? So if I do one dot dot, I would go back to the parent directory of pictures, which is /home/John. And if I do one more cd dot dot, I will go back to the parent directory of John, which is /home. So let's get back to John. And there are a couple of ways to get back to John. You can either enter cd/home/John. That's one way, and this is a long way of doing that. And another way of doing that is cd and enter. If you don't give any argument after cd, it takes you back to your home directory, which happens to be /home/John in this case. And one other way that you can go back to your home directory is by specifying the alias for home directory, which happens to be this tilde character. So regardless of where you are, if you give cd and then this tilde character, it'll always take you back to the home directory. For example, if you are inside pictures directory, let's say, and you want to go back to your home directory, there are a couple of ways, like I mentioned. You can either do cd dot dot or cd tilde, or you can just enter cd. That's another way. But I just want to show cd tilde here, so it takes you back there. So there is more than one way to get back to your home directory, and cd is a pretty useful command. And you can do relative path change directories. For example, if you do ls minus l here, you can see there are several directories. All of them are at the same level. They're all children of this home/John directory. All this. So if I go into, let's say, pictures, and if I want to now from here go into documents, you can either give the full path name for that documents directory by saying cd slash home slash john slash documents. That's one way of doing it. Now, if you want to, let's say, get back to pictures, you can either give the full path name or you can give a relative path like this cd dot dot, which takes you back into your slash home slash John, which is the parent of documents. And then from there, I can do this. So this combines actually two CD commands into one, which is cd dot dot takes you back to slash home slash John. And from there, you can do CD pictures. Instead of doing two CD commands, we can do this in one CD command like this. So this is called, relative path in Linux. Okay, that's that. And other than that, there are a few ways to uh, look at the contents of a file. For example, there is a file called names.txt, and there is also another file called cities.txt. If you want to see what is the content of cities.txt, there is a command called cat, which stands for actually concatenate. That's one way of looking at the contents of a file. Uh, okay, so this shows you the contents of cities.txt file. If you want to see the contents of files.txt file, you can do cat files.txt. And this is a bigger file. If you see, it's about 104 kilobytes. It's got 104,380 bytes. So if you do this, it'll show you the content. But what if you want to look at this file uh, in a way where you can read each line? Because now we are not able to read the lines that are at the beginning of the file. So if you want to do that, the command that you can use is less, less, and you can give the file name, files.txt in this case. If you do that, it shows you one screen full and then waits for your command. So if you just press spacebar now, it gets you the next line, next page, so on and so forth, right? So you can read one page at a time if you want, or you can do back B. If you enter B, it takes you back. If you enter F, it takes you forward. So you can go back and forth in the file. And if you're done, if you want to quit, you just have to enter Q. If you press Q, it gets you out. So less is useful if you just want to browse the contents of the file, and if you want to go back and forth, that's one command. But there are also sometimes situations where you want to look at the first 10 lines or last 10 lines of a file. Maybe you have a huge log file and you don't want to go through hundreds of thousands of lines of that log file, but you just are interested in checking the last 10 lines of that file, for example. That you can do by using a command called tail, and the file name you have to provide. So what this does is it shows you the last 10 lines that are in this file. Similarly, there is a command called head, which shows you the first 10 lines in this file. So there are several different text processing commands that are available in Linux, which are very, very useful. And each of these commands have many, many options. And one way to, uh, you know, understand what options are available is by using a command called man. Man stands for manual. And if you want to see what are the options that are available for ls command, you can do man ls. So it shows you all the options that are available. For example, ls minus a stands for all, and ls minus these only lists the directories themselves, not their contents, so on and so forth. As you can see, there's so many options available with ls command. We barely covered one or two options. We covered ls minus l, which is use a long listing format. There are literally like 20, 30, or 40 different options that are there with ls command. And you can go through man page listing by using man command. And man command shows you the contents one page at a time. And when you press space bar, it keeps moving forward. And if you don't want to see the entire man page content, you can come out of that man command by entering Q, as it shows you here. It says Q to quit. So if you do Q, it will come out. And there is another command that you can use for the same purpose, and it's called info ls. So info ls presents the information in a more verbose format and more readable format.